Hello everyone, this is Albert Espinoza and this is week 6 of our MPA 510 History and Theory of Public Administration for Dr. Sundstrom's course at Cal Baptist University. And this week we'll be discussing some thoughts and opinions about the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. An overview of this week's presentation, I'll initially start off with a quick history and structure of the Department of Homeland Security. I'll touch on the thoughts and opinions of individuals who I had the opportunity to interview this past week and ask the question, should the department be expanded or reduced? And I'll also touch on other individuals who had a different take as opposed to expansion or reduction. And the reason I chose the Homeland Security Department is, they've been in the news lately and they've somehow touched everyone's lives one way or another. So I chose that department specifically. A little history about them. They were formed, it was created back in 2002 when Congress passed the Homeland Security Act. And basically, the Department of Homeland Security was created and shaped by the events of 9/11. And, touching on what Downs had said about that, this government, this department was, influenced by external environmental conditions. Back then, President Bush, because of the events of 9/11, took an initiative to create the Department of Homeland Security. So we'll go get started and get some people's opinions and thoughts about this department. The Department of Homeland Security is composed of 22 different departments, and it's currently headed by an acting Department of Homeland Security secretary. So this individual has a hierarchy and structure in order to manage, and this individual definitely depends on others for them to follow his directions and orders, and that's trickled down the organizational chart. Of course, you need some planning, organizing, proper staffing, directing, coordination, and reporting and budgeting to make a department of this size function. So in order to, have that right structure, for this type of size and complexity of a department, you need, ideas of POSCORB in order to run an effective management of this department. Other things I noticed in regards to the department, they do have an extensive background check, and you must meet certain educational requirements in order to qualify, specifically a grade point average from a master's and bachelor's degree standpoint. And so it's safe to say they do hire individuals based off of merit, which falls in line with the Pendleton Act. The first person I interviewed to get their opinion of the Department of Homeland Security was my wife. For her, she thinks of Homeland Security, she thinks of TSA when she's flying either out of Ontario or LAX, and we interact with TSA employees who are part of the Homeland Security. Some of the things she touched on was she likes how when she's been at Ontario Airport, she sees Homeland Security officers working with Ontario PD to make sure things are safe and that the airport is properly maintained. So for her, her first thing in interaction is local government with federal government. So there's a picture there of a Texas Marshal working with Homeland Security Police Gang Unit. Some of the highlights that why she also feels that they should be expanded is because they do fight human trafficking. They do try to prevent any cyber attacks. And here's some other highlights about the department, but touching on what she saw in her experiences and influences of the Department of Homeland Security is that that marble cake approach, cooperative federalism, in regards to federal and local government working together to make it safe for passengers flying, from one city to another. And so for her, that's her influence and impact about Homeland Security, touching on what she's seen between local and federal government and working together to make it safer for everyone. The next person I interviewed for my survey was my neighbor, who wasn't too keen about the Department of Homeland Security. Once I was showing him the size and complexity of the department, he was a little perplexed why it was so big. The one he couldn't understand was why the U.S. Coast Guard was part of Homeland Security. For him, he was not pleased about the new real ID requirements, because now he has to go to the DMV and wait in line and get a new driver's license. He thinks the Department of Homeland Security is Big Brother watching over you, and his impacts are he feels annoyed when he has to wait in line for a long time to get into an airplane, and he touched on some of the things he's seen in the media in regards to how they're treating immigration or immigrants at these immigration camps down south of the country. I also touched on an article by an individual who felt that the department is just a waste of money and it's got no clear direction. You know, that it's doing multiple jobs of someone else. When you think about it, you already have the FBI and the CIA, you know, wanting to, doing their job to protect us. So why have a third department, the Department of Homeland Security, do the same thing those two other departments are doing? It felt like it was just more of a redundancy. And so my neighbor thought this department should probably be broken up or reduced just because it's so big. You know, there's this opinion that there's a lack of accountability. This department is too big, and you know it should be broken up or decentralized into maybe more manageable units, especially since you keep hearing all the negativity in the media about the acting secretary. So this kind of falls in line with Rivelin's theories about in order to manage, you know, a department of this size, it should be broken up into more manageable units, and even into what Downs touched on. You know, when this department was formed back in 2002, you know, you had you know, young people, you know, fresh ideas being hired. So there were the climbers of the department, you know, as this department was being formed by outside influences of 9/11. Fast forward to 2019, you know, this department that was once made up of climbers is now, you know, made up of conservatives who kind of seems like they're just trying to survive and make the department, you know, keep going, which in some sense, you know, some people may think that it's gone stagnant and probably ineffective, which kind of touched on Downs' theories and ideas about, you know, a department trying to just survive because this is the life cycle of this bureau and it could potentially be coming to an end. The United States Constitution, specifically the First Amendment, allows us Americans the right of expression and religion. So basically, our freedom of speech. And so, you know, in interviewing the two individuals, they had their thoughts about why the department should be expanded or retracted. But I also had interviewed two other people, and they really didn't have an opinion about the Department of Homeland Security. They just felt, you know, it's just right. It really hasn't impacted them to a point where they felt that it was a pro or a con. And so they just felt, you know, it was just right of a department. It's kind of interesting because my wife, my neighbor, and these two other individuals that are good close friends of mine, you know, they've been influenced, you know, some way, shape, or form, whether it's an interaction at an airport, what they've seen on television, talk radio. And so, you know, us as people and if you want to call us organisms, you know, we are influenced by our surroundings, whether it is positive, negative, or if we don't have an opinion about the Department of Homeland Security. Kind of falls in with Cotton Khan, you know, that groups and organisms are influenced by their surroundings. But you know what? In the end, ultimately, the mission of the Department of Homeland Security is to protect the American people with honor, integrity, and values. So, you know, take it for what it's worth, for better or worse. The Department of Homeland Security is doing their part to prevent and protect this great nation. And so, hope you enjoyed this presentation and hope to hear some good comments from you guys. Thank you.